Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm NILE and these are the headlines. Yemeni officials say fighting for the strategic city of MARIB has killed 70 pro-government and Houthi rebels over the past 24 hours. The Houthis have been trying to seize oil-rich MARIB since February. Indian forces have martyred 5 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youths were targeted during military raids in the Shopian and Islamabad districts. The occupying forces have martyred over 300 Kashmiris since revocation of the territory status on the 5th of August 2019. In Myanmar, pro-democracy activists have taken across the streets in the country a day after security forces shot dead 80 more civilians. The protester displayed 3-finger salutes to condemn the military regime and wore black to mourn those killed. More than 700 protesters have been killed in the military crackdown since the February 1st coup. India has yet again reported record single-day COVID-19 cases of nearly 153,000 and 5-month high deaths over 800. In Pakistan, 114 people died while over 5,000 contracted the disease overnight. The country's death toll has surged to 15,443, while its caseload has topped 721,000. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.9 million lives and infected more than 135 million. For more news in detail, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. Yemeni officials say fighting for the strategic city of MARIB has killed 70 pro-government and Houthi rebels over the past 24 hours. The Houthis have been trying to seize oil-rich MARIB since February. Pro-government officials have said that battles are raging on 3 fronts outside MARIB amid a concerted push by the Houthis. The new toll comes a day after officials confirmed the killing of 53 fighters on both sides. Meanwhile, the Arab coalition says it has destroyed Houthi drones launched towards Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom state media reported that the drones were aimed at the southern cities of Hamish Mustahid and Janaz. Israel says it will work with the U.S. to ensure any new diplomatic accord with Iran does not compromise regional security. This comes as U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin visits Israel on a 2-day official trip. Austin met with Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz in Tel Aviv. Gantz told his U.S. counterpart that Israel views Washington as a full partner. Austin said Washington views the alliance with Israel as essential to regional security. The two counterparts are scheduled to deliver a joint statement following their meetup. Austin also is due to meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss U.S. arms supplies to Israel. South Korean Prime Minister Chung Si-kyun has departed for Iran for bilateral talks. The visit comes amid lingering tensions over Tehran's call to unlock its funds frozen by Seoul under the U.S. sanctions. During the 3-day visit, Chung is scheduled to meet with Iranian First Vice President Ishaq Jahangiri, who will also hold talks with other political leadership of Iran. This is the first visit by a South Korean premier in 44 years and comes 2 days after Iran released a seized Korean oil tanker. Indian forces have martyred 5 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The number of the martyred youths in the territory has risen to 12 in the past 72 hours. The youths were targeted during a military raid in Shopian and Islamabad districts. Earlier, Indian troops martyred 7 Kashmiris in separate cordon and search operations in Shopian and the Pulwama districts. The authorities have snapped internet services in Shopian, Kulgam and Islamabad districts. Kashmiri leaders of the All Parties Hurriyat Conference have slammed the latest surge in the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. The occupying forces have martyred over 300 Kashmiris since the revocation of the territory status on the 5th of August 2019. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi is visiting Germany along with a delegation on an official 3-day trip. The Foreign Office says his German counterpart Heiko Maas has invited him. In a statement, it said Qureshi will hold delegation-level talks with Maas at the Federal Foreign Office. The office added that he will also call on the President of the Bundestag, Wolfgang Schäuble. The two sides will review the entire spectrum of Pakistan-Germany relations and discuss ways to deepen cooperation. It said Qureshi's visit to Germany is part of regular high-level exchanges between the two countries. In Myanmar, pro-democracy activists have taken to the streets across the country a day after security forces shot dead 82 more civilians. The protesters displayed 3-finger salutes to condemn the military's regime and wore black to mourn those killed. The demonstrators also carried a Eugenia as a symbol of triumph and defiance in a Clemenceau town. Calling the recent violence a genocide, protest organizers said that the military is shooting even at shadows it suspects. More than 700 people have been killed by the military since the first February coup. Russia says some of the conditions outlined in the Minsk peace accord on eastern Ukraine must be met before further peace talks. This comes after Kiev and the West raised alarm over a buildup of Russian forces near the border between Ukraine and Russia. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says political advisors are working on a possible round of talks under the Normandy Front. The format brought together the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, and Germany, along with France, to help end the conflict in the Donbass region. Earlier, Britain and the United States asked Russia to de-escalate tensions in eastern Ukraine. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has also voiced his support for Ukraine's sovereignty. In Kyrgyzstan, voting in a referendum is underway to choose between a presidential or parliamentary system of governance. Independent polls reveal voters are likely to support handing greater powers to the presidency. The constitutional reform will make regional policy execution for Kyrgyz President Saidar Japarov easier. Neighboring Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan also have presidential systems. The verdict will become a constitutional obligation only if the turnout in the referendum is over 30%. Egypt and Sudan have rejected an Ethiopian proposal to share data on the operations of its dam on the Blue Nile. This comes after the latest round of talks between the three countries in Kinshasa ended without progress. Sudan's irrigation ministry said Ethiopia's offers imply suspicious selectivity in dealing with what has been agreed upon. Meanwhile, in an interview, Egypt's irrigation minister said that the chief is concerned with drought management. Addis Ababa has again invited the two sides to nominate dam operations for data exchange before the dam's filling. But Cairo and Khartoum say they are seeking a legally binding agreement over the dam's operations. In Chad, voting is underway in a presidential election in which Idriss Déby is widely expected to extend his 3-decade rule. Déby was first to cast his ballot at a polling station in the capital N'Djamena. He took office in 1990 and in 2018 pushed through a new constitution that could let him stay in power until 2033. Among his 6 rivals is former Prime Minister Albert Pahimi Padake. Several leading opponents are boycotting the race, including the 2016 runner-up Salah Kezabo. Kezabo has vowed to make Chad ungovernable if Déby wins. Voting has started in Benin in a presidential election in which the incumbent Patrice Talon is heavily favored to win. Some opposition parties called for a boycott following a week of deadly protests against Talon. Thursday, an unknown number of people were killed in the central town of Bante when security forces fired warning shots. Opponents accused Talon of undermining Benin's standing as one of the West Africa's most stable democracies. Talon faces 2 relatively little-known opposition candidates. Alassane Soumanosu was a minister under the former president, and Corentin Kahu, a veteran politician. In Serbia, thousands have protested outside the parliament in Belgrade against the government's inaction to prevent pollution. With banners in their hands, the demonstrators came to Belgrade from across the country. Protest leader Alexander Jovanovic told the crowd that the investors are welcome in the country, but they cannot poison children. In recent years, Serbia has started selling its mining resources to foreign companies, despite opposition by the locals. As it seeks to join the EU, Serbia will need billions of euros of investment to meet the bloc's environmental standards. Funeral preparations for Britain's Prince Philip, who died on Friday, are underway in Windsor Castle. The ceremonial royal funeral will be held in St. George's Chapel on the 17th of April. Buckingham Palace said the number of mourners will be limited to 30 at the funeral. Prime Minister Boris Johnson will not attend the funeral to make space for as many family members as possible. In a statement, Downing Street said Johnson wants to act in accordance with what is best for the royal household. The palace has confirmed that Prince Harry will be attending the funeral without his wife. Meghan Markle, who is pregnant, will not be making the trip from the United States on medical advice. India has yet again reported record single-day COVID-19 cases of nearly 153,000 and five-month high deaths of over 800. Brazil and Mexico have reported more than 2,000 deaths each from COVID-19 overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.9 million lives and infected over 135 million. More on the pandemic in this report.
As the vaccine drives get stumbled due to one reason or another, the number of fatalities continues to aggressively grow. The University of Washington Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluations model has predicted around 618,000 people will have died from coronavirus in the U.S. by August 1st, meaning 100,000 more deaths in the country in less than 4 months. The situation is equally grim in the south. Peru registered a record number of nearly 400 deaths overnight as health workers battle a shortage of medical oxygen and saturated hospitals. The Archbishop of Chile's capital, Santiago, has been hospitalized after testing positive for the coronavirus. Celestino Eos had received both doses of the Sinovac vaccine. Colombia's capital, Bogota, has implemented new restrictions, including a 3-day lockdown in a bid to curb the third wave. Experts warn, given the behavior of citizens, they can potentially have 3 waves of the virus every year for an indefinite period of time.
Compared with other countries in the region, we are quite behind in terms of vaccinations. We have a good network of services, one of the best in Latin America in terms of the ability to serve people. But we have undisciplined people who do not abide by the measures, so we expect the waves of contagion will follow, and we will have 2 or 3 waves per year from here, indefinitely.
Leading scientists have warned that the UK government is risking the third wave by easing the lockdown, at a time when official data still shows virus hotspots across many parts of the country. Meanwhile, France will lengthen the period between the first and second shots of messenger RNA vaccines to 6 weeks from 4 weeks to accelerate the inoculation campaign. Pressure remains acute in hospitals, transfers a precious tool for saving lives. But with hospital visits allowed, families do not want patients to be transferred to other cities.
There's a big difference between the first and second wave and now, which is that now families are authorized to visit their loved ones in hospital. I can go see him, so there's a link. So it's much more difficult to convince families to transfer patients. But still we need these transfers.
A real-world data studied in Israel has found the variant discovered in South Africa can break through Pfizer vaccine to some extent.
Pakistan has recorded 114 deaths from COVID-19 overnight, its highest single-day toll during the third wave. The health ministry says over 5,000 people tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours. The ministry said the death toll has jumped to 15,443. It said out of over 721,000 cases so far, more than 631,000 have recovered. The number of active cases is now approaching 74,000, with over 4,000 in critical condition. The country's positivity ratio stands at 10.96%. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Ecuador, voters are set to cast their ballot in the presidential runoff today. This comes amid longing debate whether the country's economic issues can be best treated through socialism or market-friendly policies. The nationwide ballot distribution took place under the careful watch of the military. Pre-runoff polls indicate socialist Andreas Arauz with a lead over his rival and free market advocate Guillermo Lasso. Arauz won the first round election in February with 32.7% of the vote. A victory for him will now further consolidate a string of leftist electoral victories in South America. In Peru, ballots are being distributed in polling stations as the country prepares to vote for a new president. But the COVID-19 pandemic has diminished the usual buzz surrounding the elections. This report has all the details.
Peru battles the peak of COVID-19 cases with hospitals overwhelmed. Moreover, the voting comes in the wake of last year's constitutional crisis and political scandals. Ballots were distributed amid tight security by the National Police Force.
The National Police is providing the security escort of the trucks that are going to distribute the electoral material. Each truck is escorted with a patrol car with its respected crew. In order to accompany them, provide security during transportation and security during distribution of this electoral material in each of the polling stations.
As candidates close their campaigns, pollsters say half a dozen of them are still in the running for the top 2 spots. The government has mobilized massive machinery to ensure the elections are held smoothly.
200 trucks are leaving these premises, accompanied by 200 patrol cars. We are sending 20 trucks to Cajao, 180 trucks to Lima's metropolitan area to transport the material during the next 12 hours, constantly to 3,000 polling stations. In total, we are mobilizing 450 tons of material.
In the final pre-election polls, Keiko Fujimori, the daughter of ex-president Alberto Fujimori, has climbed to the top. But pollsters say voters were disenchanted with all candidates, giving rise to more radical positions.
China says it is willing to work with Brazil to promote its comprehensive strategic partnership. Foreign Minister Wang Yi renewed the pledge in a phone call with his Brazilian counterpart, Carlos Alberto Franco Franaca. Chinese state media said Wang termed the two sides important forces in driving forward global multipolarization. Wang said the two sides should actively expand cooperation in 5G, digital economy, artificial intelligence, and other fields. He added Beijing believes Brasilia will provide a fair and open business environment for Chinese firms operating in Brazil. Franca said Brazil aims to further strengthen the ties and carry out long-term cooperation with China. In China, 21 miners have been trapped in a coal mine that flooded in the northwest of China's Xinjiang region. The state media says so far 8 of them have been rescued uninjured. It said all the trapped miners have been located and a rescue operation is underway. The flooding occurred when the Fengyuan mine was undergoing a technological upgrade. Local authorities said the accident has cut off power and communication systems, which has complicated the rescue operation. In Indonesia, the death toll from the earthquake on the main island of Java has risen to 8. Officials said more than 1,300 buildings have been damaged in the 6.0 magnitude quake. 5 died in Malang district and 3 bodies were retrieved in Lumajang district. The disaster management officials have warned people to stay away from slopes of soil or rocks to avoid landslides. This was the second deadliest disaster to hit Indonesia this week. Last Sunday, tropical cyclone SEROJA killed at least 174 people and left 48 still missing in East Nusa Tenggara province. Tropical cyclone SEROJA has strengthened off the western Australian coast. The Emergency Services Department has broadened a warning to immediately take shelter to several towns. 5 coastal towns are put on red alert given high winds and the prospect of coastal flooding. The department has also evacuated residents of Denham and Shark Bay, 500 kilometers north of Perth. It said there is a possible threat to lives and homes as the cyclone approaches land. The Bureau of Meteorology said Category 3 cyclone is rapidly moving southeast, but it is likely to weaken to Category 2 prior to making landfall. It said wind gusts of 150 kilometers an hour are expected. In the U.S. state of California, 4 dead gray whales have washed ashore on San Francisco Bay Area beaches in 9 days. Marine Mammal Center in California said 2 of them died from blunt force trauma from ship strikes. Meanwhile, investigation is ongoing on the other 2 giant aquatic mammals. The center says common causes of gray whale deaths include starvation, climate change, and becoming entangled in fish nets. The population of around 27,000 gray whales is protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act in the United States. In India's southeastern Odisha state, forest officials in a rural area rescued an elephant calf from the bottom of a well. The calf had fallen in as a herd passed through the area during the night. The officials used an excavator to dig out the elephant from the well, but the local fire department also lent a hand to pull the calf up out of the hole using ropes. India has over 50% of the world's Asiatic elephant population, but their numbers has decreased in the recent years due to the shrinking habitats. A third lava stream has opened a volcano in the Reykjanes Peninsula of Iceland after 3 weeks of continuous eruption. Iceland hosts some of the world's most volcanically active hotspots, but this one is unusual in its proximity to the main population center. It is located some 30 kilometers southwest of the country's capital, Reykjavik. Volcanologists have no idea how long the eruption will continue, saying it could stop soon or continue for possibly decades. Bitcoin has soared above the $60,000 mark again to approach record highs. The world's biggest cryptocurrency hit has hot heights nearly its month, reaching $61,222. The rise comes amid talks of constrained new supplies against the evidence of wider adoption. Bitcoin first crossed the $60,000 mark on the 13th of March, hitting a record $61,781. Its stunning gains have been driven by its mainstream acceptance as investment and a means of payment. Earlier, Telsa Incorporation invested around $1 billion in Bitcoin and started accepting it as a payment for its cars. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.